Hello, beautiful people. I'm gonna be reading Pride and Prejudice, Volume 3, Chapter 6. Let's start now. Yeah, the whole party were in hopes of a letter from Mr. Bennet the next morning, but the post came in without bringing a single line from him. His family knew him to be, on all common occasion, a most negligent and dilatory, dilatory, look it up. Yeah, look up. Dilatory. Dilatory correspondence. But at such time, they had hopes for exertion. They were forced to conclude that he had no pleasant intelligence to send. But even of that, they would have been glad to be certain. Mr. Gardner had waited only for the letters before he set off. When he was gone, they were certain at least of receiving constant information of what was going on, and their uncle promised, at parting, to prevail on Mr. Bennet to return to Longbourn as soon as he could, to the great consolation of his sister, who considered it as the only security for her husband not being killed in a duel. Mrs. Gardner and the children were to remain to remain in Hertfordshire a few days longer, as the former thought her presence might be serviceable to her nieces. She shared in the attendance of Mrs. Bennet and was a great comfort to them. In their hours of freedom, their other aunts also visit them frequently, and always, as she said, with the design of cheering and heartening them up, and heartening them up. As though as she never came without report some fresh instance of Wickham's extra vigilant or ir- irre- 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 reg- no, let me look it up. Let me look it up, guys. Irregularity. Irregularity. She seldom went away without leaving them more dispirited than she found them. All Meryton seemed striving to blacken the man who, but 3 months before, had been almost an angel of light. He was declared to be in debt to every tradesman in the place, and his let me look up this word. Intrigues. Intrigues, all honored with the title of seduction, had been extended into every tradesman's family. Everybody declared that he was the wickedest young man in the world, and everybody began to find out that they had always distracted the appearance of his goodness. Elizabeth, though she did not credit above half of what was said, believed enough to make her formal assurance of her sister's ruin still more certain, and even Jane, who believed still less of it, became almost hopeless, more especially as the time was now come when if they had gone to Scotland, which they had never before entirely despised of, they must be in all probability have gained some news of them. Mr. Gardner left Longbourn on Sunday. On Tuesday, his wife received a letter from him. It told them that on his arrival, he had immediately found out his brother and persuaded him to come to Great Church Street. That Mr. Bennet had been to Epsom and Clapham before his arrival, but without gaining any satisfactory information, and that he was now determined to inquire at all the principal hotel in town. As Mr. Bennet thought it possible they might have gone to one of them on their first coming to London before they procure lodgings. Mr. Mr. Gardner himself did not expect any success from this measure, and as his brother was eager in it, he meant to assist him in pursuing it. He added that Mr. Bennet seemed wholly let me look up this word again. Wholly decline, dis, disinclined at present to leave London, and promised to write again very soon. There was also a postscript to this effect. I have written to Colonel Foster to desire him to find out, if possible, from some of the young men's intimates in the regiment which Wickham had has whatever Wickham has any whether sorry whether Wickham has any relations or connections. Who would it be likely to know in what part of the town he has concealed himself? If there were any one that one could apply to with a possibility of gaining such a clue as that, it might be of essential coincidence. At present, we have nothing to guide us. Colonel Foster will, I dare say, do everything in his power to satisfy us on this head, but on second thoughts, perhaps Lizzie could tell us what relations he has now living better than any other person. Elizabeth was no loss to understand from whence this defence for her authority proceeded, but it was not in her power to give any information of so satisfactory a nature as the compliment deserved. She had never heard of his having had any relations except a father and mother, both of whom had been dead many years. It was possible, however, that some of his companions in the share might be able to give more information, and though she was now sanguine in expecting it, the application was something to look forward to. Every day at Longbourn was now a day of anxiety, but the most anxious part of each was when the post was expected. The arrival of letter was the first grand object of every morning impatient, though letters, whatever of good or bad was to be told, would be communicated, and every succeeding day was expected to bring some news of importance. But therefore, not therefore, but before they heard again from Mr. Gardner, a letter arrived for their father from a different quarter, from Mr. Collins, which, as Jane had received direction to open all that came for him in his direction, she uh, 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 She accordingly read, and Elizabeth, who knew what curiosity his letters always were, looked over her and read it likewise. It was as follows: My dear sir, I feel myself called upon by our relationship and my situation in life to condole with you on the grievous affliction you are now suffering. Affliction you are now suffering under, of which we were yesterday informed by a letter from Hertfordshire. Be assured, my dear sir, that Mrs. Collins and myself sincerely sympathize with you and all your respectable family in your present distress, which must be the bitterness kind, because proceeding from a cause which no time can remove, no arguments shall be wanting on my part that can alleviate so severe of misfortune, or that may it may comfort you under a circumstance that must be of all others most affli- afflicting to a parent's mind. The death of your daughter would have been a blessing in com- comparison of this, and it is the more to be lamented, because there is a reason to suppose, as my dear Charlotte informs me, that this, let me see this word, lease, oh my goodness, this word is a very big word. This is licentiousness. Licentiousness of behavior in your daughter has proceeded from a faulty degree of indulgence, though at the same time, for the consolation of yourself and Mrs. Bennet, I am inclined to think that her own deposition must be naturally bad, or she could not be guilty of such an, let me look up this word, enormity. Anomaly. Oh wait, enormity. Enormity. At so early an age. Howsoever that may be, you are grievously to be petty, in which opinion I am not only joined by Mrs. Collins, but likewise by Lady Catherine and her daughter, to whom I have related the affair. They agree with me in apprehending that this first step in one daughter will be injurious to the fortunes of all the others, for who, as Lady Catherine herself condensely says, will connect themselves with such a family. And this consideration leads me moreover to reflect with aug- augmented satisfaction on a certain event of last November, for had it been like otherwise, I must have been involved in all your sorrow and disgrace. Let me advise you then, my dear sir, to console yourself as much as possible, to throw off your unworthy child from your affection forever, and leave her to reap the fruits of her own heinous offense. I am, dear sir, C and C and C. Mr. Gardner did not write again till he had received an answer from Colonel Foster, and that he had nothing of pleasant nature to send. It was not known that Wickham had a single relation with whom he kept up any connection, and it was certain that he had no near one living. His former acquaintances had been numerous, but since he had been in Melita, it did not appear that he was on terms of particular friendship with any of them. There was no one, therefore, who could be pointed out as likely to give any news of him, and in rest state of his own finances, there was a very powerful motive for securities in order in addition to his fear of discovery by Lydia's relations, for it had for it has just transpired that he had left gaming debt behind him to a very considerable amount. Colonel Foster believed that more than £1,000 would be necessary to clear his expenses at Ryston. He owed a good deal in town, but his debts of Anna were still more formidable. Mr. Gardner did not attempt to conceal these particulars from the Longbourn family. Jane heard them with a gamester, a gamester. She cried, "This is wholly unexpected. Had not an idea of it. I had not an idea of it." Mr. Bennet added in his letter that they might expect to see their father at home on the following day, which was Saturday. Rendered spiritless by the ill success of all their endeavour, he had yielded to his brothers-in-law's entreaty that he would earn to his family and leave it to him to do. Whatever occasion might suggest to be advisable for continuing their pursuit. When Mrs. Bennet was told of this, she did not express so much satisfaction as her children expected, considering what her anxiety for his life had been before. "What is it? Is he be coming home without poor Lydia?" she cried. "Sure, he will not have he will not leave London before he has found them. Who is to find Wickham and make him marry her if he comes away?" As Mrs. Gardner began to wish to be at home, it was settled that she and her children should go to London at the same time that Mr. Bennet came from it. The coach therefore took them the first stage of their journey and brought its master back to Longbourn. Mrs. Gardner went away in all the pers- prosperity prosperity about it all the way. Mrs. Gardner went away in all the prosperity about Elizabeth and her Derbyshire friend that had attended her from the parts of the world. His name had never been voluntarily mentioned before them by her niece, and the kind of half expectation which Mrs. Gardner had formed of their being followed by a letter from him had ended in nothing. Elizabeth had received none since her return that could come from Pemberley. The present unhappy state of the family rendered any other excuse for the lowness of her spirits unnecessary. Nothing, therefore, could be fairly con- conjectured from that. Though Elizabeth, who was by this time thoroughly well acquainted with her own feelings, was particularly perfectly aware that had she known nothing of Darcy, she could have borne the dread of Lydia's infamy somewhat better. It would have spared her, she thought, one sleepless night out of two. When Mr. Darcy arrived, he had all the appearance of his usual philosophic composure. He said as little as he had ever been in the habit of saying, made no mention of the business that had taken him away, and it was some time before his daughter courage, had courage to speak of it. It was not till the afternoon when he joined them at tea that Elizabeth ventured to introduce the subject, and then on her briefly expressing a sorrow for what he must have endured, he replied, say nothing of that. Who should suffer but myself? He replied, say nothing of that. Who should suffer but myself? He has been my own doing, and I had to feel it. You must not be too sincere upon yourself, replied Elizabeth. You may well warn me against such an evil. Human nature is so prone to fall into it. No, Lizzie, let me once in my life feel how much I have been to blame. I am not afraid of being overpowered by the impression. It will pass away soon enough. Them in do you suppose them to be in London? Yes. Where else can they be so well concealed? And Lydia used to go to London, added Kitty. She is happy then, said her father. This word, I've never heard of this word. Let me see. Dryly. Dryly. And her resident there will probably be some of be will probably be of some duration. Then after a short silence he continued, Lizzie, I bear you no ill will for being justified in your advice to me last May, which, considering the events, showed some greatness of mind. They were interrupted by Mrs. Bennet, who came to fetch her mother's tea. This is parade, cried he, which does one good. It gives such a elegance it gives such an elegance to misfortune. Another day I will do the same. I'll sit in my library in my nightcap and powdering gown and give as much as trouble as I can, or perhaps I may defer it till Kitty runs away. I am not going to run away, Papa, said Kitty frightfully. If I should ever go to Brixton, I would behave better than Lydia. You go to Brixton. I would not trust you so near it is as Eastbourne for £50. No, Kitty, I have at least learned to be cautious, and you will feel the effects of it. No officer is ever no officer is ever to enter my house again, none any to pass through the village. Balls will be absolutely prohibited unless you stand up with one of your sisters, and you are never to stare out of the doors till you can prove that you have spent 10 minutes of every day in rational manner. Kitty, who took all this threat in a serious light, began to cry. Well, said he, do not make yourself unhappy. If you are a good girl for the next 10 years, I'll take you to review. I'll take you to a review at the and of them. Okay, I'm done reading it. I'm gonna read the next chapter tomorrow. Yeah, I am. I'm gonna read the next chapter tomorrow. And I'm proud of myself for reading this. Yeah. Thank you and have a nice day. Bye bye.